Hello and welcome. In this video series, we're going to be learning to make a 2D platformer in Godot. We'll be setting up all of the usual things you'd see in a platformer, step by step, and I'll be providing all of the source code and the art that I'm using in GitHub so you can download it and follow along, or do it from scratch yourself. In this first video, we're going to be setting up the tile map, the physics, and the player controller. So let's jump right in. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using Godot 4.2.2, which is the latest version as of the making of this video. I've already gone ahead and set up a project in Godot. This is just a brand new project with nothing really added. And I've already set up Git for it. It's private right now, but when this video goes out, it'll be changed to public. So this is where you'll be able to download the whole project and follow along. I've also included the MIT license, which means, of course, that you can change this project, you can upload it yourself, you can use it for commercial use, etc., etc. If you're new to Godot and you don't know how to get this part of the setup done, let me know in the comments. I'd be happy to make a video on setting up a basic Godot project and getting it working with Git. And now let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is actually just create a couple of folders here in the file system, just to keep things a little bit more organized. So I'm going to create an assets folder. And the assets folder is going to have basically the whole project inside it. I'm going to create a folder inside of that called scenes. And a couple more folders here. We'll do one for scripts. And another one for sprites. And I think I'll go ahead and create a areas folder inside the scenes folder, and this will just be like the playable areas saved as scenes, just to keep them separate from the other scenes, just to keep things a little bit more organized. And depending on what kind of project you're doing, this could look very different, and you might want a different setup based on your workflow. But this just works for me. Next, I'm going to create the first area, and that'll be the area where we're testing stuff out. I'm also going to hit 2D here. We're going to go into 2D, and we're going to make a 2D scene. And I'm going to call this Area 1. And we're going to save this scene over in our Areas folder as Area 1, save. And now we just got to build it. The next thing I'm going to do is import some art. I'm going to import it into the sprites folder, so you need to make sure that the sprites folder is selected before you drag stuff in. That took a little while to get used to, coming from Unity, where you can just drag stuff into a folder. So I'm going to take the art I want to get in there, and you may want to use your own art, but I will be providing the art I'm using in the Git repository, so feel free to use it. I'm just going to drag it in. And now we've got a few sprites to work with there. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up a tile map, and we're going to build the level using tile map, so it's going to be really nice. We're going to hit the plus button here to add a child node to our Area 1 scene. And I'm just going to search tile map. And there it is. Create. And now we've got a tile map. I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger here so we can see it better. So now we've got this tile map thing here that we can click on, and this is where we're going to edit the tile map. But reading this, we need a tile set resource. That's done up here under the tile map settings. And we'll just do new tile set. Now we've got a tile set resource here, and we can click on it and open it for more information, which we're gonna mess around with in a minute here. Now here we've also got tile set and tile map, and I'll explain the difference between them in a second, but first we're gonna go to tile set, and what we wanna do is we wanna drag whatever tiles we're gonna use. You know, you may have your own. I've provided some tiles here in the project, and we're just going to drag them in here. Automatically created tiles in the atlas. Yeah, that's fine. Just make these windows a little bit bigger. And zoom in a little bit here. You can see it automatically created some tiles for us. I think with most tile maps, it's going to be able to do that. If you have a really unique kind of tile map, I don't know if you're going to have issues with that. I'm not sure. But for now, we've got it pretty well set up. And I can actually go to the tile map now. And the tile map is where you actually paint tiles. So in the tile map, you would pick a tile that you want to paint, and you would paint it. Whereas in the tile set, you're kind of editing tile properties. So this is more for editing, and this is more for building the level. So I'm just going to pick this basic tile here. I'm just going to try painting it on here. These are the paint tools down here. You've got a pencil, a line tool, a square, a fill bucket, eraser tool, different kind of stuff here. You can even have a random tile. If you pick multiple tiles, you can have it set up random ones using this, but we're just going to go with basic. We're going to go with pencil, which you can kind of do like this. And of course the line, if you click and drag, it builds a line. If you've ever used like an art program, you probably recognize these tools. And some of it doesn't look very good right now. We're just going to erase using the square tool to erase, which is really nice that you can do that. And there you go. We've got sort of a platform there. And you may notice, turn off the eraser tool here and go back to pencil. You may notice that these are really blurry. So the way to fix that is, there's a couple of ways, but because we're going to be working with pixel art for pretty much the whole project, I'm going to change it in the project settings. You can change it in each individual element if you're not going to be using like pixel art for the whole project, but I'm going to go up here to project settings, and then you want to scroll down to rendering and textures, and in default texture filter, you want to go from linear to nearest, and then you can close that out. And now every pixel art that you sort of place is going to be looking like how pixel art should look. You know, it's going to have that blocky look instead of the sort of blurry filtered look. So I'm just going to delete these. And that is the initial setup for the tile map here. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to set up some tile physics, because otherwise, if we put a player right here, he's just going to fall right through the tiles. They just are visual right now. So the first thing we're going to do is go up to here, the tile set. If this is not open, if it's like this, you just got to click it. And then we'll go down to physics layers. We'll add an element. And I'm just going to leave this like this for now. In the future, we can change it, make it a little bit more sophisticated, but for now, that'll be fine. And what we'll do is we'll go back to tile set because we're editing tiles. So we want to be in tile set. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into select, and we're going to pick all of these tiles. Let's see, there we go. Got to click and drag to pick everything. And all of these tiles are square tiles. They're all going to have the same sort of collision in physics. If you have different tiles like diagonals or things like that, this setup might take you a little bit more time. But for this particular tile set, it's going to be pretty easy. Once we select the tiles we want to use, we're just going to go down to physics layer 0. And right here is where you can draw a physics polygon. And I'm just going to go into the 3 dots here, and I'm going to say reset to default tile shape. And it drew a square polygon, which is just the sort of default. Again, if you have tiles that require different kinds of collision, you may have to dabble with this. You can actually move these around, but I'm just going to leave it. And if you mess it up, like I just did, you can just say reset. There you go. So all of these tiles now have that red polygon to denote their collision shape. And that's all we have to do really to set up the tile physics. And we can paint a few more tiles here just to, oops, I'm in eraser mode, just to have a little bit of a level to test in. If you drag more than one tile together, you can see you can actually paint a pattern here. We're just going to do this because we're going to test out jumping on the character. We'll worry about making the tiles nicer in a future video. We just want a testing grounds to get our player controller working. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new scene here. And it'll be another 2D scene, but actually we're going to make another node because what we want is a character body. Character body 2D right here. So we're going to create, and we've got a warning here that the character body has no shape, and we need to add a collision shape 2D to it. So we'll go ahead and do that with the plus child node. Collision shape 2D. Now we got another warning here that the collision shape does not have a shape. So back here, much like how we did with the tile set, the drop-down menu, we're going to create a new shape for it. And most player controllers tend to use a sort of capsule shape. We're going to stick with that. Capsule shape 2D. And there it is. If you press F, you center back the screen to whatever you're kind of looking at here in the scene hierarchy. and that's our capsule shape. Additionally, the character body 2D is going to have a couple other things. So one thing we're going to add is a camera 2D that'll follow the player around so we can actually move around the scene. And we're also going to add a animation player. We're going to keep the animation system pretty simple here at first, but we may upgrade it in the future to incorporate an animation tree. But for now, we're just going to go with the animation player. We're also going to need a sprite for the player here so that we can actually see it. So we'll do sprite. I'm going to sprite 2D. And I'm going to add another extra bit. This is all you really need to follow along, but just to keep things a little bit organized, I'm going to add a node 2D. And this node 2D is going to hold the animation stuff, or sort of the GFX of the player, all the graphical and animation stuff. I'm going to go ahead and call this Agent Animator. There we go. And I'm going to move the camera up here just to organize things. Collision shape down here, just so that it appears in front of the sprite. We're going to go ahead and add a sprite. So under here, texture, we're going to go quick load. I've already imported the player sprites here. And we've got our player sprites. And obviously they require a little bit of editing. Okay, so this is where things are going to get maybe a little bit more complicated, because depending on the kind of sprites that you're working with, this is going to change a little bit. In this particular case, if you're using the sprites that I put together in the project or something very similar, you've got the player sprites all in one sheet. Depending on the sprites you're using, that may not be the case. So I'm going to be showing you how to do this with something where the sprites are all in one sheet. In this case, I've split it up by rows. So the first row is the idle animation. The second row is the movement animation. Third row is the jumping. And fourth row is the falling, which are just one frame each. So we're going to click on the sprite 2D, and we're going to go up here, and where it says region right here, you're going to want to open this up. And we're going to enable region, and everything's going to disappear, but that's okay. It's going to go into the width and the height. And you need to know the width and height of each individual sprite. In this case, it's 16 by 16 pixels. And there we go. If you might be using sprites that are of different width and height, you'll just have to figure that out depending on the sprite sheet you're using. And now we have a sprite there. We're also going to take this opportunity to save our player because we haven't. I'm also going to rename this and just call it player. And we're going to save it. And we're going to save it over in scenes. We're currently in scenes area, so I'm going to go up a folder. This scenes folder, I'm actually going to favorite it so that we can easily access it right here. And we'll save the scene as player. So now we've got the player saved down here, different from the areas, and that's why I made that folder, just to keep things a little bit more organized. We may want some more folders down the line, but for now that'll do fine. The other thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to move the sprite 2D up a little bit using the W or move key here. Because I want it to be right there so that the feet are kind of at the pivot point of the object. I'm going to do the same thing with the collision shape, and we're going to take this opportunity to also change the size of the collision shape here to better fit the player. And we're going to have to move it up a little bit here. There we go. And yeah, make it just a little bit thinner. There we go. That looks pretty good. We can always edit it later if we need to. All right, I'm going to save again. Okay, so for the player controller, we're just going to click on the player character body 2D node, and we're just going to click add script. And I'm actually going to call this player underscore controller. There we go. And I don't want it saved in scenes. I want it saved in scripts. So we're going to go up a folder, go into the scripts folder. I'm also going to favorite this one. And there it is. And playercontroller.gd. That should be good. And I am actually going to do a template of the character body 2D basic movement. This is just going to give me some starting code based on the inheritance of the node. You don't have to do this. We're going to be editing this, but it's just a good starting point. So we're going to hit create. And now we've got a script here, and we're going to be editing this pretty heavily, but it gives us a good foundation for jumping and moving so we can get off the ground a little bit more quickly. And at this point, I think we might be ready to test the player out. So let's go back to the Area 1 scene up here, and I'll go back into 2D view from script view, and I'm going to add the player scene using the little chain icon here, instantiate child scene. We've got the player right here, and open that. And there's the player in the perfect position already. I think this may be working. Let's try it out. This is kind of the process. Let's run project. It's going to ask us to pick a default scene. We'll select current, which would be the Area 1 scene. You can change this later. And if I use the arrow keys, I can move around. And spacebar lets me jump. Yep, gravity's working, collision is working. It doesn't look great, and it controls really weird, but you know, there you go. I'm just gonna close this out. All right, so obviously there's a lot of stuff to improve here, so let's get right back to it. We're gonna go back to the player scene. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the camera a bit, and I'm gonna make the zoom in a little bit more here, just because it was really zoomed out. And I wanna say that the offset should be maybe at like -15, something like that. We'll try that out in a minute. We can edit that anytime. And we're gonna go into the player script, and we're gonna start changing a few of these things. But actually, before we get into that, I wanna change the input, because right now it's using these default UI input options. So it's using like the arrow keys. And what we wanna do is we wanna make our own input system. So we're gonna go up to project. I'm gonna go to project settings. And here in the project settings window, there's an input map tab. And we're gonna add some new actions here. We're gonna add jump, move left, and move right. And now we're gonna go through and sort of add the keys for these. So for jump, I'm actually gonna click this plus button right here, and it's listening for input. You can also find it from the list, but I'm just gonna press the space bar. Okay. And move left, I'm gonna do the A key, and move right, I'm gonna do the D key. And you can do whatever you want here, whatever you're comfortable with. Later on, we'll try to add some controller support, because I think that's gonna be really good for a 2D platformer, but for now, that's good. And now we can close this out. And what we should be able to do now in the player script, instead of having UI accept for the jump command, I'm just gonna put in some quotation marks, and our new options should be right here. We're just gonna put jump, and same with UI left. I just need to put in some new quotation marks there, and I messed that up. There we go. Move left. Just delete that. Move right. Of course, you can also just type it in yourself. I like doing it with the pop-up, because that way I don't accidentally make a typo and then it won't work. And now what we should have, if we save, is we should have mostly the same functionality. Actually, I'm just going to hit play from here. You don't have to go back to Area 1 to hit play. You can just, now that you've selected a default scene, we should have mostly the same result, but the camera is much more zoomed in, which is nice. And now I can move around with A and D and still jump with spacebar. And the values are still pretty crazy. So stop that, and we're going to change these values and change a couple of these variables. Okay, so we're going to be changing up these values and adding our own. And I'm going to start up here with a few export variables so that we can manipulate them right here in the inspector. The first one is going to be var speed. I'm going to make that one 10. I'm also going to comment these out. You can use the hashtag key to comment something out. I use a shortcut. It's, let me see, toggle comment, Control K. I have it mapped to my mouse, but Control K, if you press that, You can sort of comment and uncomment a line or a group of lines, which is really convenient. We're going to do another export variable. Jump power. This will also be 10. And we're going to do a few more variables here. Okay, so I added some more variables here. These are just going to be multipliers that get multiplied into these, just so that we can keep these numbers lower and a little bit more manageable. You don't need to do this part. I like to do it, but I also like to do it for the jumping, because that way we can have a negative value here without making the jump power a negative value. So what we need to do now is fix these errors. For the jumping velocity, we're going to want to multiply jump power with the jump multiplier. There we go. And for the direction, I actually made a new direction variable up here that we'll be able to access from a different script. And so I'm just going to remove this part of this variable. So that's going to be the same direction as the one up here. And we just need to multiply direction times this new speed and the speed multiplier. Like that. And velocity x, move toward here. This also just needs to be that same thing right there. I'm just going to copy that, multiply it right there. And there we go. And now we have no more errors. And the nice thing is, if we save this, we click on our player right here, we'll have access to the speed and the jump power right here, so we can tweak them and change them to fit our needs. If we feel like the player's moving too quickly or slowly or jumping too high, we'll be able to access them right there. So I'll go ahead and hit save and run this and see how it goes. Okay, and he's moving still really fast. So now what we can do is, even while the game is still running, you can just come in here and edit it. I'm just going to move this out of the way a little bit. Come in here and maybe make it 5. And then running the game again. That's a lot better. The jump is probably a little bit strong too. So let's just change that to be like 8. And yeah, that's feeling a little bit better. Those values will probably get tweaked a lot as we work on this, but not bad. And I think that's where we're going to leave it for this episode so it doesn't get too long. So we've put together a basic player controller that can jump and move. We've got the beginnings of a tile set, and I think next episode we'll work on sort of polishing all of this. So adding some animations to the player. We already have the sprites for it. We'll also set up the terrain for the tile set so that we can use auto tiles. And yeah, if you have any questions or anything, leave them down in the comments, or things that you'd like to see. And we'll be continuing building this game and hopefully making an entire 2D platformer out of it. As always, I want to give a very special thanks to all of my Patreons who support me. It means a lot to me. If you want to become a supporter, you can support me on Ko-fi or Patreon. The links are down in the description. You can also come by the Discord and chat if you have questions or trying to figure out something that's not working for you. And another reminder, all of this stuff is going to be up on GitHub, so you can download the entire project with the art, with the code, and follow along, or you can do it from scratch yourself as you're watching the video, whatever way is easier for you to learn. If you liked the video, hit the like button and subscribe to see more of this content. It really helps me a lot. And thank you so much for watching. See you next time.